Hey, what's going on Monday, January the 6th, 2025? I'm looking at Pete Browning. He's not in the Baseball Hall of Fame, but he was a very good hitter in the old school era, 1880s and 1890s. 341 career batting average. I've started looking at his 1882 season. He batted 378 that first year. 1883, 338. 1884, 336. 1885, 362. 1886, 340. This video, 1888, 1887 season. How did he do? 134 games, 547 at bats. 137 runs scored. Second time over 100 runs scored. 220 hits. How about that? First time over 200. 35 doubles, 16 triples, 4 homers. 118 RBIs. I like that. So he's got 100 runs scored and 100 RBIs and 200 hits. 55 walks. 103 stolen bases. How about that? He could run. He bats .402. A 400 hitter. And it's legitimate. Why? 547 at bats. See, some guys, if they bat .400, only get like 200, 300 at bats. This guy, 134 games, bats .402. 464 on base, 547 slugging, 299 total bases. There's 5 things I like when a player does in one season. He has 100 runs scored. Pete Browning, 137. Second thing I like is 200 hits. Pete Browning, 220 hits. The third thing I like is 100 RBIs. Pete Browning, 118 RBIs. The fourth thing, bat over 300 for the season. Pete Browning, 402. And the fifth thing I like is 300 total bases. Pete Browning, 299 in 1887. Just missed out. But he had 103 stolen bases. How about that? Very good year. In fact, one of the best years a player can have in baseball history, where you have the 100 runs scored, 200 hits, 100 RBIs, bat .402, and almost 300 total bases. What a year. I was thinking, here's a trivia question. See if you can answer it. Which player batted over 400 in the season with the most at bats in the season? You understand what I mean? A lot of players have batted 400 with 500, 600 at bats. But which player had the most at bats in a season and batted over 400? Do you know the answer to that one? You have to go to career batting average leaders and look at single season accomplishments. Those players who batted over 400 with the most at bats. I looked it up. You know who did it? Billy Hamilton. He had 702 plate appearances in 1894 and 558 at bats because he had 128 walks. So I should revise revise the question. I said at bats. The real question should be this: which player had the most plate appearances? There's plate appearances, and then there's at bats. Billy Hamilton had 702 plate appearances, but he had 558 at bats because he had 128 walks. But that year, 1894, he batted 403. No one else in baseball history who batted 400 for a season had more plate appearances than Billy Hamilton's 702. Did you know that stat? Now, I should have rephrased the question, who had the most plate appearances? The answer is Billy Hamilton, 702, and batting 400 or better. The second question I should have asked is this: who had the most at-bats? There's a difference between the plate appearances and the at-bats, right? Because plate appearances is how many times you came to the plate, but at-bats is the official stat for the at-bat. If you get a walk, it's not an at-bat. If you get hit by the pitch, it's not an at-bat, right? It's a plate appearance. So the question should be asked: which player batted over 400 with the most at-bats in a season? That's going to be tough. There's a lot of guys who have had 600 plate appearances. Difference between plate appearances and at-bats. I found out that Billy Hamilton had the most plate appearances, 702. There's a lot of guys with 600 at batted over 400. Bill Terry, 700 plate appearances and batted 401 in 1930. You had Rogers Hornsby. He also had 700 plate appearances. Is the answer to the question Bill Terry or Rogers Hornsby? Looks like looks like Bill Terry had 633 at bats in 1930 and batted 401. How about Hornsby? He's in the 700 at bats. No, 700 plate appearances. Let's see if he did it. He has 704 plate appearances in 1922. 623 at bats. Does that beat Terry? .623. Terry had 633. I think the answer to the question is Bill Terry had the most at bats, not plate appearance, 633 at bats, and batted 401, over 400. Number 2 is Roger Hornsby. Did you know those answers? The only other guy I can see, Terry, Hornsby, and Hamilton had 700 plate appearances and batted over 400. But Terry had the most at-bats, 633, and batted over 400. How about that one? There's another guy here. Let's see. I'm looking at it. George Sisler. He's another guy that batted over 400. I'm looking here, George Sisler's 1920 season. He had 692 plate appearances. .631 at bats. Terry beats him. Terry beats Hornsby and Sisler. Those are the guys who are closest. Hamilton had the 128 walks. Hamilton had arguably the most plate appearances in a season. But Hornsby and Terry and Sisler also had 700 plus. But the answer to the question, who had the most at bats and batted over 400? The answer is Bill Terry's 633. How about that? Why do I bring all that up? Because in 1887, Pete Browning, the guy I'm covering, had 547 at bats, 610 plate appearances, and batted .402. What a great year that was. All right, next video, 1888 season for Pete Browning. I'm out.